What happens when a nation's borders, once impenetrable, become a war zone? Picture the eerie whine of UAVs cutting through the night sky, sirens blaring like a relentless heartbeat across vast Russian lands. But how did it come to this?
Far-flung regions, key for troop movements and supply lines, now lie vulnerable.
Ukraine's drones unleash chaos, targeting industrial giants over 1,300 kilometers from the front. That's 800 miles of terror striking home. PBS News reported on November 4 a deep drone assault on a Russian plant, smashing expectations of safety. In the shadow of these attacks, Russian citizens grapple with a creeping dread. Supply disruptions and shortfalls cripple daily life, forcing tough choices. Fuel for soldiers dwindles, export revenues plummet. Dramatic footage shows refineries ablaze, the acrid smoke choking the horizon. Russia's dry statistics tell a tale of siege. The Caspian Policy Center tracks strikes on oil sites.
Between January 2024 and March 16, 2025, 61 assaults hit 24 refineries. Gasoline and diesel flow halts, leaving homes and tanks empty.
Ukraine's tactics sharpen, repeating blows like a hammer against forge.
Strike, repair, strike again. One refinery after another goes dark.
Psychologically, this erodes the facade. Citizens trusted assurances of quick victory. Weeks turn to years, and now the booms echo impossibility. Putin's overconfidence backfires splendidly. Who predicted home fronts exploding? Russia beneath Ukraine's shadow. Yet, the true sting lies in economics.
Lone drone raids aren't crumbling Russia alone. Fading energy fortunes unleash fiscal strains.
Aging resilience.
The Carnegie Russia-Eurasia Center's director Alexander Gaboev warns, stop now, or face ruin.
Is Russia nearing the abyss? Indicators scream yes. Inflation soars, wages stagnate. Picture Elena in Moscow, clutching borrowed bills for dwindling food stocks.
One woman's struggle mirrors a nation's plight.
Bloomberg captured her story on November 26, fewer clothes, dreams of imports shattered. Domestic goods reign, but prices bite like frost. Data reveals chronic inflation tearing since last year.
September's rate tops 10%.
Central bank hikes to 21% fail to soothe.
July peaked at 9%.
Trade reports confirm a harsh year. Yet November eases to 6.8%, not from strategy, but withered demand grinding prices down. Consumer spending drops sharply. No more house hunts.
Moscow Times on November 27, just 8.3% can save for a down payment, stretching median earning families to over 6 years.
Retail sales plunge. Milk, pork, staples falling 8 to 10% in September to October. Stalwart foods turn luxury. Wage freezes worsen hunger's grip. Easing back, non-essential industries crumble too. Putin's war machine drains all.
GDP growth slumps, first quarter at 1.4%, second at 1.1%, third at a mere 0.6%.
Zero looms. Recession whispers approach. Logistics shatter exemplify the ruin.
The Insider's November 6 piece, wheels are coming off. Freight rail, life's blood for all goods, decays.
Half of 24 industries in freefall. Cargo loads drop 7% in 9 months, 60 million tons lost.
600,000 train cars sit idle.
Forestry predicts deep cuts for 2026. Mikhail Yurin, deputy minister, cites ruble strength, sanctions bite. Russia's back aches from endurance. Fong fatigue sets in. But winter looms, tarnished hopes. Will peace talks sway before collapse?
Watch as cracks widen, ambitions wane.
Unexpectedly, internal fractures hint at rebellion's spark. Is Putin's grip slipping in the cold? Stay glued, the storm may bury him.
Russia's wartime push has crippled its economy. Stagnant GDP mirrors a nation gasping for air.
As winter looms, can Putin dodge the avalanche?
The great Russian machine stammers, its mighty GDP growth, once a roar of pride, collapses like a house of cards. Picture this, in the first quarter of 2025, that growth tumbled to a meager 1.4%, a whisper in the wind of ambition.
But it didn't stop there. By the second quarter, it slid to 1.1%, a chilling drop. And in the third quarter of 2025, it hit rock bottom at just 0.6%, the silence before the storm. The big zero barrel-shaped horizon isn't far now. No signs Russia will break in time. Recession looms like a predator, ready to pounce, swallowing industries whole. Many sectors crumble under the weight, leaving a wasteland of broken dreams. Contributors to this slowdown? A legion of woes hits every corner of Russian industry, a symphony of destruction. Amid the fading GDP numbers, an unexpected twist emerges. Not just any industries fail, but the backbone of Russia's freight rail industry cracks wide open. Why does this matter? Imagine freight rail as the pulsing heart of Russian logistics, transporting goods for every factory, every battle line. On November 6, the Insider called it in a bold report, "The wheels are coming off." Russia's freight rail teeters on collapse, train tracks now echoes of empty promises. 20 of Russia's 24 key industries slump simultaneously, a dearth of products begs for transport, but trains sit hollow, hungry for cargo. Not that engines lack, they have no freight to carry. Dig deep. Between January and September 2025, cargo loading dropped a brutal 7%, equaling 60 million tons left uncarried. Each average Russian freight car touts a 100-ton capacity, so 600,000 cars, vital in 2024, lay dormant, silent sentinels of neglect. Touch these idle trains if you could, feel the cold metal rust, smell the stale dust of forgotten loads, a tactile reminder of economic rot. What if this rail failure whispers a darker secret? Even Russia's defense sector, that supposed fortress, props on these same trains to ship weapons and gear to fight in Ukraine. This massive drop hints at something sinister. Perhaps Russia's coffers run dry, arms too scarce to arm its warriors. Is Putin fabricating victory while the war factory grinds to dust? Zoom into specifics. Russia's forestry sector shrinks into oblivion. On November 27, the Moscow Times warns of a deep contraction in 2026. Fueled by a stubborn strong ruble, sky-high interest rates, and biting Western sanctions. Deputy Industry and Trade Minister Mikhail Yurin spots the downward spiral, pointing to a trend that could, what? Flashback to Putin's boastful days, March 2022, the air thick with propaganda smoke, siren wails memulalating in the distance as he vowed a swift triumph. Crowds cheered, flags waving like fragile banners, the scent of victory imagined, but now, that memory stings like a thorn in one's thumb as reality snaps. Will this forestry fiasco spark widespread revolt, or is another industry next? Tune in for the agony ahead. How long before Russia's entire war machine buckles under its own flawed strategies? Imagine a world where Russia's mighty economy crumbles under the shadow of a war it vowed would end in days. Has Vladimir Putin's arrogance finally cost his nation everything, or will the winter freeze reveal an even darker betrayal from within? To recap the last segment, Russia's forestry sector is bracing for a harsh contraction in 2026, battered by a surging ruble, sky-high interest rates, and relentless Western sanctions. Deputy Minister Mikhail Yurin predicts a grim downturn, potentially inflating prices and sparking shortages that ripple through daily life. Can you feel the chill in the air as steel demand plummets, echoing the hollow rumble of empty factories? The bitter sting of coal dust lingers in the nostrils of workers scrambling for scraps, while the merciless grind of grinding metal against metal fades to silence. Russia's industrial heart is fracturing. Could this collapse shred another 20 to 30% of output by 2026, turning prosperity to dust? Picture the desperation, cars gathering rust on neglected lots, grocery shelves groaning under sparse supplies as Russians clutch tight to dwindling wallets. The acrid haze of unpaid bills mounts, with corporate debt soaring to 10.4% and retail despair climbing to 12%. Businesses teeter on the brink, their choking grip on survival forces merciless cuts. Employees vanish like ghosts in the night, their final paychecks evaporating before they can warm families against the encroaching cold. What happens when the warriors of industry fall silent? Demand spirals downward, a vicious vortex pulling Russia's economy into the abyss. Sharp spikes in costs, groceries, financial services, all scream the same agonizing truth. You felt it, haven't you, the ragged edge of inflation tearing at your flesh, making every purchase a battle? Yet the wound deepens unrevealed. Ukraine's relentless drone assaults on Russia's refineries, now like relentless pests in the night, their distant were morphing into screams of scarcity. Gasoline queues stretch like serpents under flickering lights, the metallic tang of fuel teasing nostrils as drivers ration every drop.
By late October, prices surged 11.6% from the year's start, a cruel twist in the tale of domestic needs. Mid-year, strikes crippled up to 38% of refining capacity, leaving pumps dry and communities stranded.
The deafening roar of explosions fades, but the aftermath?
Short suppliers hike prices, forcing folk to eke out fractions of what they crave.
Is this the breaking point, where Putin's illusion of victory shatters, leaving civilians exposed and humiliated in their own homeland? As winter whispers impending doom, will Russia's pride shatter first or force a surrender hidden in the snow? Stay tuned, the storm is only beginning to howl. Ukraine's drone assaults have crippled Russia's oil refineries since early 2025.
Striking hard in mid-year, they knocked out up to 38% of refining capacity. Without that, Russia struggles to produce enough gasoline.
This relentless barrage slams the economy like a hammer on fragile glass.
Fuel prices soar, hitting daily essentials. Drivers face long queues at pumps, the acrid smell of exhaust lingering in the air.
Gasoline shortages bite deep. Panic buying?
That's a smokescreen from Russia's energy minister Sergei Tsevalev. He blames the people, claiming brief closures sparked rush demands.
But how? Gas stations slap on caps, limiting buys to 30 liters per driver. Filling a tank becomes impossible.
Feel the sting of those limits, the frustration of idle cars at stations, engines growling faintly in the distance.
Facts shatter the minister's words.
Ukraine's strikes devastate refineries, not panic.
Domestic motorists drown in surging costs and scarce fuel.
But the Kremlin ignores this pain.
How far will denial stretch? Exports shatter too. Russia relies on oil and gas sales to fuel its war machine.
Shortages at home mean less to sell abroad, choking revenues. The Kiev Post reveals over 20% plunge in oil and gas income in the first 10 months.
State finances hemorrhage.
Picture those emergency funds draining like blood from a wound. Budget deficits climbed to 1.7% of GDP in October.
Projections screen 2.6% by year-end. Government borrows wildly, gearing up for a dollar-denominated bond sale. Gold reserves vanish from national funds. Russia breaks a taboo just to survive. We explored this in another video. Dive in for the full shock. Wrenching it all is sanctions, a vice grip since troops crossed into Ukraine. Ferocious restrictions crush industries. Shock twist, Western parts? Scarce now. Mounting through shady dealers jacks up costs. Businesses fold under the weight, leaving workers in the dust. Rub the ache of rising rates, 21% at the peak, still high now. Who could predict this? Ukraine's drones, meant for borders, now unleash fiscal hell across Russia.
Putin's empire crumbles, but he clings to control.
Next, as winter approaches, will Russia sue for peace or spiral further? The chill sets in. Will the ruble tumble next, dragging dreams into darkness? Can Russia's mighty economy crumble under the weight of sanctions and war?
That's the shocking reality as Vladimir Putin's invasion drags on, draining billions, sparking economic chaos, and forcing Russians to tighten their belts while air raid sirens wail across the land. This story unveils how a war meant to end swiftly is shattering foundations, from skyrocketing prices to weakening demand, leaving a nation on the brink of recession, wondering if winter will bring collapse. We've explored Russia's bleeding finances and drone shadows over oil sites, leading to widespread pain.
Now, dive into how Western pressures tighten like a noose around the Kremlin's throat.
Picture the icy grip of isolation choking factories, where machines once roared with imported parts now sputter in silence. The cold clutch of Western sanctions slams doors on essentials, forcing companies to scramble through murky intermediaries who inflate costs until parts burn holes in pockets. Putin, arrogant in his self-reliance, underestimated Russia's dependence on the West's industrial lifeline. Each new sanction cranks tighter, twisting economic woes into a chaotic storm.
Shocking question, could one U.S. move shatter Russia's energy empire overnight?
Earlier this month, as reported by United 24 Media, the U.S. targeted sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil, two titans of Russian energy. These blows aim to starve revenue streams by limiting oil and gas sales, clipping taxes that fund Putin's ambitions. Imagine the stench of spoiled ambitions as crude flows dwindle, money evaporates like fog in a frostbite wind.
And even China,
once a steadfast buyer hoarding Russia's fuel, pulls back, sensing the shift. Ariel Cohen from Forbes calls it tightening the sanctions noose, a vivid squeeze meant to drag Putin to the negotiating table.
Ukraine's allies must sustain this pressure, piling on misery that compounds with every ruble spent on war. Blend this with relentless expenditures, and disaster brews. But we're not talking mere equipment costs.
Cohen highlights the recruitment grind, about 29,000 soldiers enlisted monthly, each pocketing wages far above average, bleeding budgets in a torrent of desperation. Feel the heavy drag of boots on snow-laden streets as families stretch thinner, questioning if this endless drain will expose Putin's bluff.
Twist incoming: what if China's retreat isn't just business, but a calculated push for Russia's downfall?
We've laid bare how sanctions suffocate industries, inflating costs, and crippling production. Now, witness the cascading fallout on wages and warriors, where every recruit siphons more from an emptying treasury.
As Putin's gamble darkens, will he backpedal or drag Russia deeper into the abyss?
The wind howls with economic strain there, and it whispers of more cracks in the armor to come.
In the last video segment, we uncovered Russia's explosive war costs sparking an unstoppable crisis.
Ex-military analyst Cohen pointed to the shocking fact that monthly troop recruiting hits 29,000 soldiers. Each earns way more than the average Russian wage, draining funds like never before.
The Kremlin clings to a facade, pretending it still wields energy power over nations ditching Russian oil and gas.
Igor Sechenko exposes this desperation, claiming sanctions will wreck the West, while his own empire teeters on collapse.
But cracks are forming fast.
Did you know Russia's military payroll alone devoured over $25.6 billion in just the first half of 2025?
That's a staggering truth that echoes the thunder of doom.
Feel the cold sweat of fear gripping families as billions vanish into trenches instead of homes. Double that figure for the full year, and we're talking more than $51 billion pumped in, without a dime for weapons, ammo, gear, or the endless grind of war.
Can a nation sustain this bloodletting forever? The air feels thinner, the ground unstable.
Years back, I remember a quiet winter evening in Moscow. The sharp bite of frost on my skin, the distant hum of city lights flickering like wary eyes, and the bold promises of victory in Ukraine ringing out from state TV. Sirens were rare then, a deceptive calm, but the ruble's weight in my pocket felt solid.
Today? That memory shatters under the weight of exploding reality. Flashback ends.
Russia's war machine can't endure this relentless churn much longer. Soldiers thirst for fuel.
Fighters hunger for parts, all while the Commonwealth fractures.
Picture the Kremlin's walls shaking as the economic backbone snaps. Yet Putin's fixes feel like band-aids on a gaping wound.
Response? Slap on more debt through sky-high borrowing from home markets. Levy crippling taxes ahead like jacking up VAT rates and a sneaky tech tax on every gadget.
United 24 Media lays it bare: these moves might scrape up cash, but they crush the very people propping up the system. Small shops shudder under the squeeze, consumers hoard every ruble, unable to afford the goods flooding Russian shelves. It's madness, squeezing stones for blood, as the old saying warns.
Given the dire revenue gaps, where can Russia turn?
Raking in more cash from the destitute masses feels futile. People's pockets are empty ghosts, their dreams deferred.
Desperation twists into farce.
Russia postures as if Western sanctions hurt foes more than foes, a bizarre bluff that insults reason.
Igor Sechenko, hailed by Reuters as a powerhouse in energy, spins this yarn.
He declares, the West's savage sanctions on Russia and China will spawn fresh economic disasters in the West itself. Western leaders blissfully ignore their peril. His words reek of panic, sanctions gnawing at Russia's core like termites in wood. The sanctions, they're the hidden dagger, carving out Russia's gradual unraveling amid fake bravado.
Is this the disguise of a crumbling giant, or the cry of a leader cornered by his own ambition? As winter's icy grip tightens, hear the distant drone hum turning to horror. Smell the acrid smoke of burning refineries, feel the chill panic of uncertainty. Russia's facade crumbles, but what desperate gamble awaits next? Padzir, the nation's breathing shallow, on the brink of an explosive turn nobody saw coming. Will the West's resolve shatter first, or will Russia's winter of discontent bury ambitions forever? Stay tuned, as the truth wins tighter, and the endgame nears. Imagine the iron grip of sanctions tightening like a vice around Russia's throat, choking off every desperate gasp for air. As Saikin's bold words echo hollowly in smoke-filled boardrooms, can you hear the creak of fracturing pipelines, the distant rumble of emptying silos? His profits are crumbling like dry earth under a relentless sun, yet he clings to the illusion that Russia wields an unbreakable energy sword against nations fleeing its toxic grasp, gas fields lying fallow, oil rigs silent under artillery's shadow. But desperation claws at him, raw and unyielding, as he paints sanctions as a suicidal pact, a mutual downfall where the West topples with Russia. Is this the frantic bluff of a man watching his empire dissolve in the acrid stench of burning illusions? No, it's a facade cracking under truth's hammer. Sanctions aren't a shared apocalypse, they're a sharpened blade, carving deeper into Putin's Ukraine obsession while Russia's economy spirals into a howling storm of debt and despair. Why ease the pressure now? The West must hold firm, double down, even unleashing fresh restrictions that amplify the chaos swallowing the nation whole. Feel the chill wind of winter biting through threadbare coats, the gnawing hunger in empty markets. Russia's spine has snapped, its mighty frame reduced to splintered ruins. Without seismic shifts from the Kremlin, every bone will shatter into forgotten dust, leaving a people adrift in icy shadows. Yet, in this vortex of ruin, a flicker of transformation glimmers. US-brokered peace talks, shoving Ukraine and Russia toward a tense negotiating table. On November 21, America unveiled a 28-point blueprint for truce, slapping Ukraine with a deadline that's vanished like mist at dawn. This outline tilts perilously toward Putin's favor, riddled with concessions that demand ruthless revisions before anyone dares call it fair. But here's the gut-wrenching twist: what if this generous plan is a Trojan horse, luring Putin into a trap where his own ambitions boomerang, igniting internal revolt that topples his throne not from Ukrainian drones, but from the furious whispers of his starving citizens? As sirens wail and rubles burn, the real war rages within. Will Putin yield, or drag his fractured realm into eternal night? Imagine a world where a leader's overconfidence leads an entire nation to the brink of collapse. Can Putin's dream of a quick victory in Ukraine turn into a nightmare that crushes Russia's spirit? Shocking reports reveal that Russia's economy is crumbling under the weight of war, with prices soaring and drones raining down terror on unsuspecting homes. The scent of burning fuel hangs in the air, sirens wailing like a relentless heartbeat, as the touch of cold reality forces citizens to hunker down, their dreams deferred. From the chill of unpaid bills to the sting of empty wallets, this invasion, meant to end swiftly, has instead unleashed fiscal chaos that even dark winter can't hide. Peace talks whisper behind closed doors, but according to the Kiev Post on November 27, economic strain looms large, threatening to shatter Putin's grip on Ukraine for good. Reflecting on that initial spark of arrogance, what if the very drones meant to protect had a revenge twist? Ukraine's long-range strikes are now biting deep into Russia's heart, exposing vast territories never imagined vulnerable. Sirens echo through frozen skies, the thud of explosions shaking windows, as oil sites erupt in flames with acrid smoke that clings to the skin. Border areas, once bustling hubs for sending troops and supplies into occupied lands, now lie under constant threat, their industrial hums silenced by unexpected bombardments. Could this be the twist that humiliates Putin's relentless march, turning Russia's far reaches into a battleground? PBS News detailed on November 4 how Ukrainian drones struck a plant over 1,300 kilometers, or about 800 miles, from the border, proving no region is safe. The Caspian Policy Center maps 61 drone attacks on 24 oil refineries between January 2024 and March 2025, crippling vital fuel production and exports. With repeated hits intensifying in late 2025, citizens grapple with the psychological torment, no longer trusting promises of a short conflict, the air thick with dread as repairs fail against fresh assaults. Building on that drone onslaught humiliating Russia's defenses, how terrified must civilians feel knowing these strikes could veer and devastate their lives?
The economic fallout is profound, eroding the very foundations Putin built. High energy losses sap resilience, with revenues vanishing like mist in the wind, leaving a weary nation yawning at the edge of despair. Alexander Gaboev from the Carnegie Russia-Eurasia Center warns that ongoing the war now is Russia's wisest path, yet the cliff's edge beckons closer, no brakes applied. Inflation surges, prices climbing faster than wages, stinging pockets as essentials become luxuries. Elena, a Russian woman, shared on November 26 that imported goods are out, domestic alternatives barely affordable, her wardrobe shrinking with each shopping trip.
Anecdotal? No.
France 24 reported a 9% inflation spike in summer 2024, dipping to 8.5% by October, prompting the central bank to hike rates to 21%, now reduced but still painful. January 2025 hit 9.9%. Surpassing 10% in ensuing months, dropping to 8% by September. And easing to 6.8% in November per the Kiev Post, not from smart policy, but weakened demand crushing morale. Only 8.3% of Russians can save for a 20% home down payment in 2 years, house prices inflating relentlessly, while staple food sales like milk, pork, buckwheat, and rice plummet 8 to 10% from September to October.
Diving deeper into this demand drought stripping Russia's vitality, what unexpected pivot could turn humble industries into the war's ultimate downfall?
Putin's wartime focus has ravaged non-defense sectors, production grinding to a halt like rusted gears freezing in snow. GDP growth tumbled from 1.4% in Q1 2025 to 1.1% in Q2, then 0.6% in Q3, recession whispering ominously. The Moscow Times on November 6 spotlighted freight rails implosion, 20 out of 24 industries collapsing, cargo loading down 7%, 60 million tons in the first 9 months, idling 600,000 freight cars, starving defenses and commerce of essentials. Forestry faces a 2026 contraction, hit by a strong ruble, sky-high rates, and sanctions, as Deputy Industry and Trade Minister Mikhail Yurin admitted.
Yet, as rail lines gather dust and forests whisper of decay, will a sudden twist reveal the key to Russia's breaking point?
The psychotropic grip of war seeps into every breath, average souls choking on fear, wallets emptying faster than falling leaves. Sirens wail routinely now, not just alerts but harbingers of hardship, the crackle of fires serving as a cruel reminder that this was never meant to touch the masses.
Russia's back bends under the load. Peaceful winters turning to discontent, and if Putin hesitates, his empire's ambitions may dissolve in the frost of reality. Is this the humiliation foretold, where a nation's strength crumbles from within?
Imagine this: Russia's once mighty economy, propped up by oil riches and endless spending, is finally gasping for air. After years of pouring billions into a conflict that dragged on far beyond expectations, the cracks are widening. Public services crumble, savings vanish, and ordinary folks huddle in the chill, wondering if warmth will even be affordable this winter. Could Putin's gamble shatter his own nation before it breaks Ukraine? 347 characters. As we left off, the relentless drone strikes from Ukraine are piercing deep into Russian territory, shaking homes with distant booms and filling the air with the sharp whine of engines overhead. Citizens, once assured of safety far from the front lines, now flinch at every shadow, their sense of security evaporating like morning mist. The economic wounds from these assaults run deepest, targeting vital energy hubs and fueling a growing desperation that threatens to snap the country's spine. Those towering revenues from energy exports, the steady drip of government spending that kept Russia afloat against all odds, they're drying up now. Fatigue creeps in like a winter fog, heavy and unrelenting. You can almost hear the collective sigh echoing across vast Siberian plains, a deep, weary exhale from a people stretched too thin. Alexander Gaboev, director at the Carnegie Russia-Eurasia Center, lays it bare.
He peers at the numbers, the charts pulsing with warning red.
By every key measure, he warns, Russia should halt this now.
Peace would heal what war has torn. Yet, blinders stay on. To crave an end, you need to glimpse the abyss first.
Russia teeters close, but hasn't tumbled yet. The drop looms, jagged and unforgiving, and the pace quickens toward it.
No breaks in sight. Why the rush to ruin?
Picture families in cramped Moscow apartments, the metallic tang of cheap canned goods lingering on the tongue as budgets shrink. Prices climb like vines overtaking a crumbling wall, outpacing paychecks for the first time in ages. It's a squeeze that bites into daily life, turning simple choices into battles.
Take Elena, a voice from the crowd, sharing her story with Bloomberg on November 26.
Her words carry the weight of quiet defeat. "I've changed everything," she confesses, fingers tracing empty shelves in dimly lit stores. Fewer outfits in the closet now, dreams of foreign fabrics dismissed like whispers in the wind.
Imports? A luxury lost to soaring costs.
Local options only, or go without. Her tale tugs at the heart, a single thread in a fraying tapestry.
But is it just her struggle, or the echo of millions? The data screams yes.
Persistent inflation has clawed at Russia for over a year, relentless as a Siberian gale. France 24 reported back in November 2024, summer rates spiked to 9%, easing barely to 8.5% in October.
Panic gripped the central bank.
They hiked the base interest rate to a staggering 21%. It dipped later, but 2025 offered no mercy.
January roared in at 9.9% inflation, according to trading economics reports. The next 3 months? Over 10% each. Only by September did it slip under 8%.
The Kiev Post notes a fragile drop to 6.8% in November.
Relief? Hardly. That's a hike not seen in a year, leaving deep gashes in wallets and spirits. No genius policy tamed it.
Demand just collapsed, people too broke to buy, forcing prices down in self-defense.
Want a home in this storm? Dream on.
Moscow Times on November 27, only 8.3% of Russians can scrape together a 20% down payment in 2 years.
Median earners? 6 grueling years to save, as property costs balloon with the rest.
This slump ripples everywhere, a chill seeping through markets.
The Post cites Russia's spare index, folks ration basics, the earthy scent of fresh bread a rare treat. Retail for milk, pork, buckwheat, rice? Down 8 to 10% in September and October.
Not from plenty, but paying wages frozen while shelves empty of affordability.
These aren't thriving signs.
They're the rasp of a nation wheezing.
And what if this downward spiral doesn't stop? As industries falter and the cold deepens, will the average Russian's breaking point ignite a fire even Putin can't control?
Imagine if a war meant to crush an enemy in weeks instead bled your nation dry, leaving families shivering in the dark as sirens wail like ghosts in the night.
Did you know Russia's own president turned the country's might against itself, forcing citizens to sacrifice everything for a conflict that's now costing billions? This brutal twist didn't just humiliate Russia's leaders, it exposed their fatal arrogance, as Ukraine's drones now haunt vast borders. To recap, Russia's failed blitzkrieg against Ukraine has wrecked its economy, slashing services and reserves. It's a shock that no one predicted. Civilians, once insulated, now hear the distant boom of strikes, feeling the war's icy grip closing in. What if the man who promised victory is now watching his dreams crumble under relentless attacks?
Feel the chill of that reality as air raid sirens blare, disguising fear with routine noise, horns piercing the silence, engines roaring faintly before the distant thud of Ukraine's assaults. These aren't random hits, they're targeted savagery on energy hubs, choking Russia's lifeblood. The scale is staggering. Drones once buzzing near the border now dive 800 miles inland, shattering industrial plants with precision that laughs at defenses. But here's the gut-punch humiliation: Russia's outskirts, key for funneling troops and supplies, are now frontline nightmares. In a bizarre irony, Ukraine hasn't hidden its hollowed-out miracles, drones bleeding Russia's finances drip by drip. Continuing from the drone incursions transforming Russia's map into a danger zone, let's plunge deeper into the fallout. Could these mechanical horrors morph the average Russian's life into a nightmare, shattering Putin's vow of fleeting conflict? The nightmare deepens with reported strikes 61 times since January, targeting 24 refineries that turn oil into diesel and gas, fueling homes, armies, and exports. Each hit smells of burning ruin, acrid smoke curling like accusations against leadership. Ukrainians have refined their art, striking the same spots repeatedly, forcing costly fixes only to ignite again. The psychological scream echoes. Civilians who trusted quick triumphs now huddle, dreading diverted paths that could rake homes. Economically, the agony mounts invisibly yet palpably, the cool scrape of dwindling reserves, the stale weight of empty shelves signaling strain. Building on the relentless refinery assaults eroding every layer of Russian life, how far can one nation's hubris stretch before snapping? Fatigue creeps in like winter frost, offering no escape. High energy revenues and stimuli, once shields, now fade. Alexander Gaboev of the Carnegie Russia Eurasia Center warns, it's time to halt, lest Russia tumble over a fiscal abyss. But denial persists, the cliff looming yet unacknowledged. The grind intensifies with crushing inflation, 9% spikes in summer 2024, peaking at over 10% early this year. Wages stagnate, biting harder than frostbite, as prices soar. Elena, a Russian woman, clutches bargains tightly, rejecting imported luxuries for bitter domestic norms. Sweeping drops in savings, only 8.3% can manage home down payments, paint a bleak canvas. Retail plunges reflect desperation, milk and meat sales down 8 to 10%, staples turning scarce. Shops reek faintly of rot, hands trembling over wallets that yield nothing. Yet this scarcity spreads like damp mold, corroding industries. GDP growth slows to a crawl, 1.4% in early 2025, sinking to 0.6%. Recession breathes down necks, dragging even defenses into the mire. As stagnation infects every sector, what twisted fate awaits a nation whose war machine stalls mid-stride? Freight rails, life's veins, seize up, cargoes down 7%, a full 60 million tons idling 600,000 cars. Metals clank uselessly in yards, devoid of purpose. Even weapons stall, unable to collide with enemies. Forestry wilts under ruble's strength, sanctions choke, and rates sting like bark splitting under invisible pressures. Mikhail Urin foresees deep contraction in 2026, a shiver of inevitability. In this cascade of collapse, private pains mirror public woes, customer demand wilting under economic erasure. Forests once booming now echo silent falls, wood splintering and used. Carrying forward the industry's total breakdown, as if the war's grip twisted reality into unrecognizable despair, what irony lurks when energy assaults unite with fiscal fraying. Oil wells, struck repeatedly, gush not only black gold but crimson losses, drone wars meeting wage wars in a visceral clash. Citizens' pocketbooks, once fattened by exports, now pinch cruelly, touch-evoking paper-thin histories of plenty. Consumer hunger fades, stones unturned offering no alleviation. Inflation's chokehold, fortified by disruptions. Crown's recession is king. Seniors eye empty larders, young ones forego futures, despair's tangible heft landing heavily. To knot this unraveling thread, Russia's winter looms not just cold but apocalyptic, a discontent brewing retribution for Putin's gambit. Peace talks hum secretly, but irons sharpen in storms. Will defiance crumble before the avalanche, or forge a phoenix from ashes? The question hangs, unresolved, as economic embers dim. Russia's endless conflict in Ukraine has eroded their once firm economic stance. High energy revenues and steady government spending propped up their resilience for years. But fatigue is creeping in now. The big Russian yawn signals a nation nearing exhaustion. Carnegie Russia Eurasia Center Director Alexander Gaboev lays it out clearly. Based on key economic metrics, Russia should halt the war immediately. He insists on this. To desire an end, you must glimpse the precipice. Russia hasn't reached it yet. Perhaps not now. But that cliff looms ahead. Russia charges forward with no brakes. Why the evidence? Multiple pressures are grinding down everyday Russians and the whole economy. Picture the bitter chill of hardship setting in. It starts with a deadly mix, soaring prices clashing with dwindling income power. Inflation surges ahead of wages for the first time in ages. How do the rising costs sting daily life? Imagine touching wallets that feel lighter each day. The scent of scarcity hanging in the air, imported goods out of reach. Russian woman Elena opens up to Bloomberg on November 26. She shares how the war twists her routine. Fewer outfits hang in her closet. Imported luxuries vanish from her world. They're simply too pricey. Domestic items rule the shelves now. Is one person's struggle a nationwide crisis? Not alone, but the figures back her up.
Relentless inflation plagues Russia for over a year. Back in November 2024, France 24 noted the blow. Monthly inflation hit 9% in summer. It dipped to 8.5% by October.
That jolt prompted their central bank to hike the base rate to 21%.
The rate has eased since. Yet 2025 brought no relief.
January kicked off with 9.9% inflation, per economic reports.
The next 3 months pushed it over 10%. It fell under 8% only by September. What unseen humiliations await Putin as these cracks widen? You won't believe the shocking turn when Russia's fiscal tricks fail, leaving the populace gasping for air. What if the war's true cost hasn't even peaked, trapping millions in a vortex of despair that Putin can't escape?